to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about the crazy stupid stuff people do in marketing and how we cannot do that. But instead, we can do very productive, meaningful marketing activities with our resources and with our time. And I'm really excited to be back because we had a little break that we took from the show. We were off for the month of May so that I could enjoy a European vacation with my family. And I'm really excited to be back with the show, though, and especially to be back with this topic because for those of you who might be watching from Calgary, we just had kind of our big innovation conference this past week called Adventures. And one of the things that happens a lot at that conference is there's lots of pitch competitions. So there's lots of startups trying to get money. There's lots of investors trying to invest. And there's a lot of conversation about marketing and what do we need to do for marketing and what are the meaningful marketing things that we need to know about from a startup perspective, because at the startup stage, we are not Apple or Coca-Cola and we don't have those kind of resources. And so today I'm really excited to have Daniel with me to have this conversation about what are some of the things startups need to know about marketing? And also, what are some of the mindsets that empower startups and founders to make good decisions when it comes to their marketing? So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. For those of you who are not joining us for the first time, welcome to the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. We are glad that you are here. And while this might look like, especially if you're watching from a video perspective, two people having a conversation, this is actually an opportunity for all of us to have a conversation about the marketing mindset for startups. So if you are joining us live, or if you are joining us on a replay and you are a startup founder or you're working with startups and you have questions about what are some of the things you need to know about marketing, what are some of the distractions you might have in marketing, any and all of above, we would love to hear it. Also, if you happen to be an expert in marketing and you are catching the show, or you work with startups yourself, we would love to hear in the chat some of your insights, some of your perspectives, some of your comments, because that will make our conversation even more robust. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is get in the comments, folks. Get in the comments, get in the conversation, and it makes it a more powerful conversation for all of us. All right. Let's get right into that conversation. But before we do that, let's learn a little bit more about our special guest for today, Daniel. So Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why marketing mindset, especially for startups, is something that you're so passionate about?
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for having me here in your show. Really excited to be here. Looking forward to it. So, first of all, my name is Daniel. I'm the CEO of Catapult Startups, and pretty much I've always been passionate about the marketing mindset. I started, I guess, my entrepreneurial journey about 11, almost 12 years ago. I would say quite a long time ago. When I had it was a long time ago. And one of the things that I've kind of understood when it comes to the startup for marketing or marketing for startup companies is that those obstacles you need to face, but also the drive they need to have as well, and really kind of understand what your product's value proposition is. And it's something I'm really passionate about. So I'm glad you having me here. And yeah, excited to share some of the expertise that I have. And one of the things that we do here at Catapult Startups is, of course, we help new Canadians and first-time entrepreneurs launch startups and also SMEs. So we have quite a bit of experience when it comes to that.
Yes, which is why I'm so excited that you are here to have this conversation today. So, Daniel, in your introduction, you talked about obstacles and drive that startups need, experience along the way. Let's start with drive, because I always feel like when you're in that kind of startup phase, there's a problem that you've seen that you feel like the market is not satisfying. And so there is that drive in order to turn that into a business. So when we look at that from a marketing perspective, how important is it to harness that drive into what you're going to look at doing in terms of your marketing?
I think it's very important. I think when you're focusing on drive when it comes to marketing, you need to understand where you're starting out. So if you're a startup, you need to understand that You might not have the budget you need, you might not have the expertise or knowledge you need, but you're comfortable trying things out. And I think the best mentality or the best advice you can give for an entrepreneur, it's when you say this phrase, when you say, I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. That is a very, very powerful phrase. And I think that's a lot of any entrepreneur that has that kind of mindset will get stuff done. So what do I mean by that? When you're starting out in the marketing, in marketing as a startup or as a small, medium-sized business, again, you don't have a lot of capital, you don't have a lot of knowledge, you don't have a lot of resources. So you have to be comfortable with failing. And don't think about it as failing, think about it as learning. So you're learning right now what's not working. So we can always look at the things we're doing and focus, oh, this is not working, it's failing, or we can flip it around and be like, okay, these are the things that my potential ICP being ideal customer profile doesn't like. Great. Eventually you'll get to something they do like, but you have to be comfortable with that. And that means you have to be comfortable putting out 100 posts, 500 posts. I mean, I don't want to, you have to be comfortable with a large amount of number or a large number of rejections that, maybe it's not, it's that your product, your marketing, your marketing, what's it called, endeavors aren't fitting the right product market fit, but you're getting there. You're slowly chipping away what doesn't work till eventually find the little gold nugget that does work. And it takes a lot of time for different businesses, right? You're never gonna hit it out of the ballpark your first time, but it does take it takes time and it takes very perseverance. I think I talked to an entrepreneur, really, really smart individual, in the tire sector. And he really was a proponent of SEO and online sales. He started out his ROI on online sales. So for every dollar he would put in, he would know how much he would get back. He started with at a loss. So for every dollar he would put in, he would only make 70 cents. Well, he got it so good that now for every dollar he puts in, he makes $12 out of that. But that took over 3 years of
Mm-hmm.
going from negative to all the way to a positive to a dollar. So if you know if he's spending $1,000 online, he's going to get 12,000 back in return. He
Mm-hmm.
knows that hands down because his targeting and how's he able to work through all those kinks. But that takes a really long time and a lot of drive. You're not gonna get it your first 6 months. You're not gonna get it maybe your first year. I think one of the things that, for example, we did at Catapult Startups, this was the whole management team. We kind of sat down and we're like, look, we need to understand how long it's going to take and the hurdles it's going to take us to get Catapult Startups up and running and the risk that's ahead of us. So it's also understanding the risk. For us, it was knowing that, hey, we might not generate anything for 3 years. We were lucky enough that in a year and a half, we were starting to generate some income. But understanding that allows you're giving yourself the runway to make the necessary changes, but necessary efforts in your marketing campaign. So you're not bogged down by like, oh my God, in 3 months, nothing is happening. What's going on? And you're panicking. You're testing things out. You're improving your messaging. You're improving your communication. You're even improving your color schemes. Maybe the colors you started out aren't the colors you finished. Again, this is when you don't have any budget. You're not able to hire a proper graphic designer or marketing team that can flush out a whole logo. Let's be honest, right? I was very lucky. We're very lucky. We had everything we needed within Catapult to flush everything out. But we still needed to realize, okay, what is our runway? What's our
Mm-hmm.
appetite or risk appetite? And really understanding that too is also going to give you that because everybody's different. And of course, you don't want to do this for 5 years not receiving anything. You're like, that makes sense. No, that's insane. But you do want to give yourself a runway. Now,
Mm-hmm.
while we were doing this, we'll have our day jobs. We're all managing our own firms, marketing firms, or consulting firms, or legal firms. But we still had our day jobs. We were able to put time aside to work on Catapult and make it grow. So same thing, someone starting up that maybe let's say it's working an 8 to 5 job or a 9 to 4, whatever it is. I would still encourage them. Give yourself still a long runway because you have that opportunity because you already have you're working and you're able to pay your bills. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
give yourself 6 months and figure out what's working. I think within a good time frame will be 6 months. 6 months, by that time you should fully not fully understand, but have a good understanding of what your customers or your ideal customer profile likes and doesn't like, and why you can even kind of messaging. Is it a picture of you, the product you're trying to sell, but also understand what you're trying to sell as well. If you're selling ice cream, that's a lot easier than selling a car or a software system. A software system might be 3 to 6 months sales cycle.
Mhm.
Ice cream, it's a thought. Oh, I might want to get some ice cream. Let's go get some ice cream. You just might need to be at the right time on a social media post, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a sunny day and be like, hey, the first 200 people get 10% off or whatever. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of sales to your store, but that's because it's ice cream,
Mhm.
right?
I
So,
think
I mean,
this is
yeah,
something that's so interesting for me because I think when we look at the concept of marketing, I think sometimes it's oversimplified to the point where we say like the rules for advertising ice cream are the same as the rules for advertising a software sales, right? Like, and it's just not true. And I think like deep down inside as consumers, we know that because we know how we consume advertising and marketing as well. But there's a lot of information now on the internet that tries to quote unquote simplify these things, especially for startups, right? There's not a lot of resources, not a lot of funds, right? So this is what you need to do. And then sometimes it works, but also there ends up being a lot of people doing the same thing. So something, Daniel, that you touched on was that you have to kind of figure this out for yourself. So do you see in the work that you've done with startups any kind of easy button type of things that people tend to get sucked into that end up not really delivering in the long term?
that's a very good question. I would have to say partnerships that don't fit.
Mm,
What do I mean by that? I think with entrepreneurs, you're focused on revenue. You're focused on generating revenue. So when you're marketing your product or your service, you might get approached from an organization or a group or many sorts of people saying, "Hey, I think your product would be a good fit for this because of the size of the market, the size of the community, the how much they spend on this kind of product or service. That there might be a lot of revenue on the table that you're leaving, and that's fine and dandy." But you need to understand if that's going to hinder your business in the long run,
mm,
right? And if it makes sense for you. So, what do I essentially mean by that? I think entrepreneurs, and I'll put it myself, I think I'm a fault at this too, and which is why I work very closely with their strategic advisor. It's I try to now avoid the shiny things.
mm,
So, entrepreneur, we're like, "Ooh, look at the shiny thing! Look at the shiny thing!" We're like, "No, don't look at the shiny thing," and you kind of go to it. And the shiny thing for me tends to be revenue,
mm,
right? Tends to be an opportunity, like a large opportunity. Like if it's 100K plus to 500,000 plus, I'm gonna be like, "There's an opportunity we gotta go for." But I'm like, is it worth it? How much resource are we taking? How much marketing, again, resource or marketing budget are we taking to chase this new venture, to chase this new opportunity? Does it make sense within the current business strategy that we implemented? If our goal was to engage with students, in high school, does it really make sense for us to engage with PhD students?
right.
No. But maybe it does make sense for us to engage with junior high students, knowing that they'll eventually be high school students.
Mm,
Maybe that makes a little bit more sense. Maybe we're kind of building that capacity for our clientele. So we're educating them so when they're ready to, use our services or products, they'll be ready to do so, right? Again, that's just speaking out of context here. I guess just just
no,
what's
that
coming to
makes
my
sense.
mind.
And I think too, because we talked about the experimentation that is available with marketing. And so, like, would you say also that there's an opportunity from a marketing perspective to kind of test out those opportunities before you might go like all in on a partnership and create like some kind of little marketing test that you could do that can test the waters before you jump all in?
Yeah, for sure. I would say something that I've heard before from two different things I've heard. One of them, it's doing little mini pilot projects, like a month to 3 months, and just seeing what the feedback is,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't mean that you're selling the product. It maybe just means you're announcing it. You're in the works. You're in collaboration with this other organization to produce this new product or service. and kind of see the appetite that's happening from the with the feedback from the customers. But that at the same time, let's say, okay, so let's say, and again, just making this up here. Let's say you're a soap company. Okay, so you make clean soap from renewable products. Okay, and you want to start selling maybe now cosmetics and renewable cosmetics, but you don't know if it really maybe fits your line because your messaging has all been about hygienics and this and that, and now you're bringing in cosmetics, and that may be confusing messaging because one thing is cosmetics for beauty product, another thing is about hygiene, personal hygiene, but maybe you want to test it out to your audience. So one thing that a lot of people do is they'll either do a quick little, social media campaign, or they'll add a button in their website just with the name of the product. That's it. And just see how many people click on it. So it's either a marketing campaign and you put $10, $20 or nothing in it. You just, pushing it through your social media channels with a little button and just seeing how many people can click on it. And same on your website, you're adding a new button or a new product offering or service, and you're leaving it there for a month to 3 months, and you're kind of seeing how many people engage with it. Again, you're not spending money and resources on building a new product or those partnerships, but you're testing out the waters, right? Because hey, if you have a lot of clicks in that new product or service, maybe that's something you should explore. And you're like, okay, we should do this. The response has been immense. Or maybe, hey, we shouldn't. There's been no response to this. Now we know we didn't waste time or energy or resources pursuing this.
Mhm. Okay, so then you bring up a good point here about websites, because I'd love to talk about websites from a startup perspective, because I think we're at the point in business building where like pretty much you have a website, right? A website is now like business cards. If you want to be a real business, you have a website. But one of the things that I see really often is that people don't really know what their website is supposed to do. And then they create a website, and then maybe it gets traffic, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we try to test something through there, but because we have no traffic, we can't actually test whether or not anybody is looking at that type of product. So when in the work that you've done with startups, what are some of the things that you would say that startups need to focus on from a website perspective, but also that are maybe not important from a website perspective?
I would say keep it simple. You don't have to make it overcomplicated. I think a simple one-page website with your information to your target audience is all you really need. But don't get too complicated. That's the biggest one. That's if you're a simple small business. If you're selling anything online, I would say you got to do a little bit more e-commerce. But then also, so let's focus on that. So let's say you're opening a retail store online, and of course you're doing you're doing your online marketing. You're using LinkedIn, you're using Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, or now they call X, whatever you want to call it, and you're using that to promote your e-commerce store. It's all about the user experience then, because what you don't want is someone you spend all this time in your marketing and they go into your e-commerce store and all of a sudden it takes them 7 clicks to get to the product they're looking for, not even buying it, just looking at it. I mean, you need to make it 3 clicks from the time they see something to how easy it is to buy it and purchase it. If it's longer than 3 clicks, you're making it really hard for the individual. And you also need to look at I would say, your sales pipeline. At what end of the chain are they leaving? And I will guarantee you 70% are leaving when you're asking too much information. It's like they're right there. They're ready to give you the credit card and pay for it. And you bombard them with all these questions because you want data. I get it. You want valuable insight data. But is data hindering your customer and it's upsetting them, right? Maybe a better way for you to capture data, and this is where you need to be a little strategic and think about how you wanted to do this, but maybe this is where you do a Google login. Of course, if you do a Google login, you're giving up some data, but you'll also be able to acquire some data at the same time, right? You might not be looking to acquire all the data points you're looking for, but at least you acquire quite a bit, and you'll make it easier for the user as well. So it's with the one click, they're logged in, and on your side now you have their information, their email, they're subscribed to your newsletter, and you can now engage with them every month, or once a month, right? But again, it's really thinking about the user experience. I think a lot of people that build e-commerce don't think about the user experience. They're thinking, I've done my job by getting into my store. And then they're like, well, now that you're in your store, what? That's one area. The other one too, I would say, it's information. it's a way that information is disseminated and it's in the flow of information. um, you kind of want to guide the client, the customer, the individual on your website to be like, yes, I if it's just an information based website, that I need to work with this company or this individual.
Mhm.
And then a very simple, here's my number, here's my email, very easy to access. Make it as simple as possible. But again, it's that user experience. And even the color, play with the colors, the wording, all that's really important. And I agree with what you're saying, Tracy. I feel that your website right now is your calling card, is your business card, you know. Um, but one of the things I want to talk about later on is it's still marketing is still a person to person business. It's still relationships are very personable. And at the end of the day, people aren't buying the product or service; they're buying you.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that. Also, before we jump into that, I just want to recognize that we have James and Omar that have joined us in the conversation. So, gentlemen, please feel free to ask your questions and share your perspectives as we go through the remainder of this conversation as well. So, when we're talking about these experiences, right, we're talking about creating, I mean, I think from a tech perspective, there is a lot more conversation about the user experience, but at the end of the day, this is the customer experience, right? How are we making it easy for the customer to hang out with us, or are we making it difficult for the customer to hang out with us? How important is that? Like, I think marketing and websites in particular are a great place to set the stage for that. But also, how important is it for that type of experience to be able to flow through the entire company? Because I think a lot of the times people think this is a marketing thing, right? And we do this on our website, but then we don't think about, oh, we have people signing up on the website for calls with this person, but the back end system isn't putting those calls into this person's calendar, or any of these other kind of back end operational things that might be tied into the front end marketing. But really, I always think they have the potential to break the brand experience very fast. If I've tried to create this over here in terms of marketing, what might be happening that is just doing the exact opposite of that once I've created it over here. Um, and I know that you work with startups from the whole kind of experience. So, how important is it to like work through all of those things? And do you often see marketing as a starting point for that experience, or do you more often see marketing as like kind of the last place it manifests? Just curious.
No, thanks, Tracy, and that's a good question. I would say it's an all-encompassing process for us. And what do I mean by that? We see marketing as a way to generate revenue. So if it's not generating revenue for you in some form or way it's leading to that, I feel we're not doing our job. Now, again, creating awareness can still lead to generating revenue. The goal in an awareness campaign is just to bring awareness about your company, your product, or your service, or what you do, that will eventually lead to revenue, right? So there is a process down the line, but I would say the back end needs to meet the front end. I think that's something I learned very early on. Remember, like maybe this is like 7 or 6 years ago, I was working with an inventory company, and we're working with their sales and marketing department, and we were doing a really good job at promoting the company. But unfortunately, we did such a really good job that there wasn't enough inventory to fill the orders. So that's when we're like, hold on a moment, why didn't we better understand that? Now that's more of a inventory assessment management thing. I fully understand that, but how we see things, marketing needs to be connected with all the departments. Marketing needs to be in communication. This could have been a wonderful opportunity for marketing to say, hey, we're running low. We're selling out. It's going so fast. We have the last 10 items left. You will not get another one for another 2 or 3 months or a month.
Right.
So again, that's a marketing opportunity missed because we didn't properly understand what was going on. So it might sound like, oh my God, there's a problem, but it could always be turned into a marketing opportunity. It's just how you see things. I mean, how I see things is this: you can have a glass of water, half empty or half full. It's still 500 milliliters of water in it, right? And it's just how you communicate that is really gonna make or break your business, right? So every opportunity or every, I guess, failure or troubles or fire to put out can be, you can flip it into an opportunity to bring more attention to your business.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you bring up another interesting point in my brain, which is data, right? So more and more, we are collecting more and more data all the time about some things that are meaningful and some things that are less meaningful. And how important is it to know like what's meaningful data and what is not, so that you don't get inundated with the wrong data that is leading you in the wrong direction, whether that is like marketing data that's leading you towards or leading you away. Okay, so where I'm coming from with this, if we rewind, my background is in market research, and a lot of surveying data that I see is just very poorly structured, right? We are asking a question and we're collecting data, but the data doesn't really answer the real question we had. It's now just data. And now we're spending all of these resources and times, and maybe we have tools and all these things to process the data, but the data is not actually going to actually have any value for us at any point ever. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on the data phenomenon. What are the important things to know about managing that appropriately?
No, I think that's a great question, and data is extremely important for any business that's trying to grow. I mean, the amount of data a business can have while doing very little work, it's insane. It really is. But I think before collecting data and having the data and trying to better use or understand the data you have or interpret the data you have, that could lead to many different pathways. I would say you need to start with the goal. So you need to reverse engineer it. You got to figure out, what am I trying to figure out? What is my goal here? So I'll give you an example where maybe what's good data and bad data. Then let's look at maybe website data. How much? So okay, let's say that I have two sets of data. The first data, it's showing me that, again, after then we're looking at the flow chart on Google Analytics. After the third click, I have a 40% drop, but 60% are still there after the third click. Wonderful. And after the third click, they're going into now the sales or the e-commerce site. Wonderful. And when they get to that, I'm only getting dropped off another 10%. So I'm keeping 50%. That's amazing. I mean, I'm making these numbers up. That's great. So I'm like, how can I make that 50 to a 60? How can I make that 60 to a 70 and increase it? But maybe a data, and this is my opinion, that maybe people shouldn't look at is how much time people spend in your website. Now, that's different between how much time people spend on your paid site. So if they're in the paid tab site and they're trying to figure out that, maybe that's when they're trying to figure out that I need to buy this, but is this too expensive or not? Okay. But what I'm talking about is like you're excited because people are now spending more than 3 minutes on your website. That's a golden ticket. But I'm like, okay, well, let's really analyze and think about that. Is your website have a lot of information that makes people read for longer than 3 minutes? And after the 3 minutes, they're not, doesn't mean they're going to buy anything. They just wanted to read it.
Right.
That's one. Or two, and I do this, I'm horrible at this. I wanted to find that website. Okay, cool. And then I open another tab, and they open another tab, and they open another tab. And that's that website now, it's been there for 10 hours on my tab, and I forgot about it. I forgot about it. Now it says that, oh my God, there's people looking at my website and they're staying there longer. Great. I'm providing wonderful content. So now if you're, let's say, a content creator and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm getting all these views and everything, but are you really? Or is it just stale? Right? Oh my, or let's say your ERP system. Oh my God, wonderful. There's people looking at it and they're really spending an hours on my website. They're really trying to figure out how to implement the system no, they forgot it. So I would say there's some data points that I'm like, are they really valuable? I could be wrong here. That's just my own personal thoughts on that. But there are other data sets that are more valuable, I would feel.
And I think it ties into what you were saying before about like what's the goal of your organization? What are you trying to do? Because even if you had data on how long people are staying on your site, and people were actually staying on your site longer than they used to, if people who spend more time on the site are less likely to convert, then it's not good. I mean, it's still helpful data because then maybe actually you want to make some changes so people don't spend as much time on your site. But like, you need to know why you want to know that, right? Why am I interested in the data? And I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to like social media data, there's a lot of stuff that people are like, track this, track this, track this, track this. And like, yeah, I mean, I can track the number of impressions I get on my posts, can track it. The value of me tracking that, to me, negligible, and I don't actually do it. It's interesting to me if I have a post that gets a lot of impressions and I'm like, okay, people are liking this kind of stuff. But that's it, right? It's like a 2-minute brain thing. It's not me collecting all this data and assessing. And so, again, am I saying that collecting engagement data is bad? No, it's not inherently bad. It's just important to know why you're doing it. And I'd love to talk about this, Daniel, because I see this quite a lot, specifically when it comes to marketing. When people are in the building business piece of that, is that there's I don't know that I want to say that there's a desire, but there's definitely a tendency for people to copy other people. So let's say I am starting a web design agency. Now, there's a whole bunch of people who already have web design agencies. There are successful web design agencies, there are not successful web design agencies. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go find the successful web design agencies and I'm going to copy what they did, and that's going to be my marketing strategy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because at the beginning we were talking about like your runway and that exploration of like what works for you. So I guess my question would be, how do you see that working together? Like, how can we learn from people who have come before us, but also take into account that we are unique and the exact same things might not work for us?
No, that's very interesting thought there. I would say when it comes to that, that's a good question. That's a thinker for sure. Um, I guess when it comes to the marketing perspective, and also when it comes to like making sure that we're moving along, and we're able to really understand the kind of different data points, but also that the different kind of perspective that marketing can do for you when you're first starting out. I would say it really depends on that individual. It's good to look at other companies to see what they're doing well, but you need to understand that every company has a voice and you have a voice as well, and you don't want to sound unauthentic. So, for example, I would love to take Catapult to stages where Google is, but I don't speak Google language. I speak Catapult language. So we're doing the best we can for Catapult. We have a long-term plan for where we want to see ourselves, where we want to grow, where we want to see even ourselves within North America and even the global markets. But that's going to take time. But we also have realized that, hey, there are companies that already done this. Why don't we look at where they're doing good and maybe we can emulate some of those things, but with their own little twist. So it's
Mhm.
good to look at those bigger companies, the companies that have been there, done that before, because you're always learning new things. I think for me, someone that I was looking at different kind of companies, this is like 3 or 4 years ago. Now it's kind of changed transitions, but it was Startup Calgary. Startup Calgary at the beginning was really heavily focused on startup. Now it's moved into Platform Calgary because the organization kind of changed, and that transition happened. But I really like what they were doing in their approach and how they were engaging with entrepreneurs. I really like their networking and info sessions they were having. This was like pre-startup TNT. This is like 4 or 5 years ago. That also Innovate Calgary was also running with them back in the day. And I really like that approach as well. But you also got to put in your own approach, because you got to make it your own, right? Like in how those individuals were running it, it made sense to them. But I knew if I sent out the same emails or event communication, maybe I wouldn't have got the same kind of audience for our events,
Mhm.
right? So it's also like learning from others, but also putting a little bit of yourself in there, because then it's your authentic. And again, back to what I was saying, people don't buy your product or service, people buy you. So if your message is authentic, then your marketing is going to be authentic. It's going to be like, okay, I want to at least get to know this product or service a little bit more.
Mhm. It's interesting because I have a lot of people who ask me about like LinkedIn live shows because I do a lot of LinkedIn live shows, and it's like people think I know the way to do a LinkedIn live show, and I have my way of doing LinkedIn live shows, and it includes like how I brand it and how I promote it and how I find guests and all of these things. And there's one of the things I've always really struggled with is when people want to copy my way, and I always tell them like I will share my way. If anybody is curious, if you're here and you're listening and you're curious about how Tracy produces her LinkedIn live shows, let me know. I'm super happy to share it with you because it's one way to produce a LinkedIn live show. It's not the only way. And this I think is the crux of what I'm hearing you say, Daniel, is that you can see what other people are doing and you can be like, oh yeah, that seems like a good idea. And I have the, like my logic brain says this can work for me and I can map it out and I can tie it back to the business and all these things. But at the end of the day, I always find marketing only works if you really believe in it working.
Oh,
And
100%.
it doesn't matter
100%.
if it's worked for someone else. If it's worked for someone else, but you don't believe it's going to work for you, it's not going to work for you. And so if you can if you can learn the things and then kind of map them up into like, what would Tracy do? And like you said, give yourself that runway to say like, okay, well, I would love to do a show, but I'm going to try this first episode and see how it goes. And I like this about having a guest, but I like this about not having a guest. And you just kind of like build your own way to do that from the different inputs from different people. These are the things that allow you to create something that is unique, but also something that's sustainable for your business. Because once it's something that you like that much, that you can get behind that much, that is what makes it sustainable. It makes you want to do it. So I'm totally with you on that.
No, for sure. And thanks, and I appreciate that, Tracy. And just another thing too on that, I would say, and you're right. So for us, and it's just like I guess I don't know if this has to do with I do believe it has to do with marketing, but it's also like I know we talked a lot about online and e-commerce, but also I would say the personal side of things. The personal side of things is really important. One of the things you brought up, if you mentioned earlier, if you don't believe in it, you're not going to do very well. So it's the same thing as your messaging. When you're engaging and talking to people one on one, face to face, you need to believe your message. Otherwise, why would they? Right? It's as simple as that. If you don't believe your message, why would anybody else believe your message? But even within that, I would say it's always good to treat every interaction as a marketing opportunity and see yourself almost like as a mini infomercial or mini commercial about your business, your product, your service, right? Again, this is one of those things that, how can I put it? When it's well done, it won't even look like marketing.
Right.
So what do I mean by that? So one of the things that now we're expanding here with Catapult Startups and what we're doing very well now, and I mean it's a nice surprise, but it's something that I wasn't expecting. Now we're starting to get organizations to engage with us, to help them with kind of like expand their operations, or set up the non for profits, or pretty much just essentially help them where they want to be, help them grow. And this is something that we weren't planning to offer, but through our own, growing with Catapult Startups, engaging with partners, and our marketing campaigns, and just us being out there. Like, so whenever we're at an event, it is, and we're, it's a picture, we're posting it on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram and whatnot. There is a purpose and a reason behind it. Not just the post, but also the personal interaction. Who I'm interacting, why I'm interacting with them. I'm looking at events, who's going to those events. It's still, I would consider as a marketing campaign. So then when we're engaging with individuals, they know that, wow, we come across as, we know what we're talking about, we're passionate about what we're doing, but we also have that, like you're saying, the belief, and that makes that connection easier. So when companies are talking to us and they're looking at us saying all these things that we're doing, it's not just by accident. There is some method to our madness. So when they're looking and taking a peek under the hood, they're like, wow, you guys run a well-oiled machine. Is because we also want to showcase that to our clients that, hey, when you're working with us, this is the kind of, I would say, professionalism you can expect, which makes a lot. But again, it's still part of the marketing, because if they have a good experience with us, we're going to tell other individuals. Same thing. If they have a bad experience with us, we're going to tell 100 more individuals. Because of a bad experience, we tell a lot more people than a good experience.
True.
Right? So even within the customer service piece, and even when engaging with people, we're always still thinking marketing.
Mhm. Well, and I think this is interesting because I was actually having a conversation with someone yesterday about this and the complexities we sometimes add to our business processes because we're trying to say, this is marketing, this is sales, this is this is that. Because the example that you gave, which is really just networking, right? I'm networking and I'm showing up and I'm showing you who I am, and I am not afraid to share my knowledge with you. I mean, you could call it sales, you can call it marketing, you can call it a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, this is about people knowing you and knowing about your business through you and being able to like follow you in a campaign, right? If Daniel and I are both involved in a local organization called SIYS, Struggle is Your Success. And we are both involved in that for different reasons, but we are all on the same train, going towards the same direction to try and make sure that as many children as possible have the opportunity to see what could it be like, what's the taste of entrepreneurship, and how can we empower some of these underprivileged groups that haven't had access to that kind of opportunity before. And so when you have that type of sharing, it allows people just to be like, yeah, I believe in that too. I'm going to come and do that. I believe in first generation immigrants being able to start their own businesses in Canada. I believe that. Let's go talk about it. But when we create too much structure, or structure is maybe a bad, because I believe in having structure, but like when we create too many limitations on what we're allowed to say, and we say like sales is a pitch, right? And then we're just having this pitch, but like nobody builds a relationship on a pitch, or like it's not actually leading somewhere. But what if we just, you could go. I remember actually being at Adventures last year and sitting next to somebody at a table because we were waiting for the next speaker. And then we ended up having a great conversation about something that was like interesting to both of us, but not really work related, but not like completely not work related. Like there's so many limitations we put on these things. And if we just create ways for us to quote unquote bring our product and our service to market, which is really just show people that it exists, then I think it may be kind of uncomfortably broad or maybe like too easy, but at the same time, I think it leads us into our runway much faster. It allows us to work through that process just a little bit faster than if we're just trying to collect other people's ways of doing it and trying them on.
No, for sure. You have to be creative. You're gonna have to think outside the box, And I'm kind of glad you bring that up, because it's like it's not just about networking. It's not just about an online campaign or social media campaign or a TV, radio or ad campaign. I would say, to me, marketing and how I see it as the essence of it. To me, marketing, it's you're trying to connect with your tribe, with your community. So what does that mean by that? Your product or service is not going to be for everybody, and you're trying to find the individuals that are going to be best able to connect with what you're trying to sell, whether that's a product or service. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that, and this could be done through marketing a commercial. Okay, so let's look at a very classic commercial. For me, one of the best commercials ever done was the Coca-Cola commercial. If I could buy a Coke, the world today. It's a bunch of kids singing, "If I could buy a Coke," and they all start singing. Now, I'm from Peru, and I was born in '84, and I remember watching the commercial like in late '80s, and I still remember it. And that commercial was done in Spanish in Latin America and Peru, but it was done in Hindi in India, in Mandarin in China, and in different languages all over the world, just to put the point across of Coca-Cola. And if you look at the message, all it's singing, it's about happiness.
Hmm.
The thing is, like, if you buy someone a Coke, you make them happy. Now, who doesn't want to be happy? Everybody wants to be happy. So I would say the tribe or community they're trying to engage with Coca-Cola was happy people. That very simple. So we believe that happy people are our market, it's our customers, our ICP, and our
Hmm.
product makes them happy. A product is a product of nostalgia,
Right.
right? So that would be for me at least a way of communicating that and being creative and thinking kind of outside that box because again you're trying to engage with that audience. You're trying to something that's the core. Now that's a
Hmm.
commercial. Now throughout the history of advertisement and marketing, there's been other means of advertisement. I think there's a couple famous ones. Of course, one is the cigarette one. You know, cigarettes instead of doing ads, it was just people smoking in public places and making feel comfortable and sophisticated yet empowered. So that's why this is in the 30s and the 40s. But another one was it was I forget the movie what it's called, but it was a film in the 1940s or 1930s, and the film it was all about a story was about a prince from the Middle East or Africa that fell in love with someone with an American lady. But the story was horrible, the movie was bad, and they were like, this is gonna flop. So a marketing campaign, a marketing firm was hired to promote this company. And what they did, they fleshed it as a full-on love story that it really happened. So they hired an actor to play, hey, I'm a prince from the Middle East or this, fictitious country, and I'm here and I fell in love with this lady, and they hired an actress, and yeah, we're in love, but they're I need to go back home, and their parents won't allow us to marry each other. And then they paid for the New York Times and columns to advertise and put this as a real story. And they're like, oh my God. And people were like, what a crazy and amazing love story. How can I know more about it? Oh, well, there's a movie coming out in 2 months that will explain all about how they fell in love and what the ending happened, what happened at the ending. So now everybody knew about that movie and everybody wanted to watch that movie. But if you weren't to the traditional marketing channels, it would have got nowhere because they were like, we don't know how to market this. This might not be a good movie to pursue. How do we do this? So it was thinking outside the box.
Hmm.
All right. It was thinking, how do we engage with an audience who wants to find love? It's a
Hmm.
hopelessly romantic, and it's a story that can captivate them. That was a try with the community they were trying to engage with, right?
Hmm.
So there's different ways that you can engage with the audience you're trying to engage, hence your ICP or ideal customer profile. But the more creative you are, and you can stifle creativity, you can follow a guideline, a plan. I mean, I think the best thing I learned at Inventures this last week was, how creativity happens. When David Usher was like, trying to write a song, and he pulls out the guitar, and this little kid comes out. It's like, "Hey, Dad," and he gets interrupted. That's
Hmm.
creativity.
Yeah.
You're gonna get interrupted. You're not gonna find that creative moment in a boardroom. You might find it walking your dog, or going on a swim, or on a hike, or on a bike run, or hanging out with friends, or
Hmm.
in the middle of a night watching a YouTube video. I don't know, but creativity comes in many different ways and forms, right?
Hmm.
But when we stifle it, when we allow ourselves, no, listen, because we have to follow a very regiment, I would say, formula, that's when we stifle and almost, I would say, suffocate creativity. And
Hmm.
I agree with you. We do got to follow process and procedures, but I would say no when it comes to creativity.
Yeah. And I with you too, right? Like that's so unique per person. Like what gets your creative juices flowing. And one of the things I always say is like, this is why I love having conversations because for me, that's what makes me feel creative when I have someone else's input and they're asking me questions, I'm asking questions, and my brain is puzzling stuff together. That's when I feel creative. And if I am trying to like solve a business problem and I have to do that while I'm not in a conversation with somebody, it doesn't flow. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. And so that, again, it's not that my way is the right way, but when you know what your way is and you can use that to build upon, that's where you have where all the power lies. Okay, Daniel, I know we're coming up on an hour here, so I want to just finish on one thing because we talked a little bit. You talked just now about creativity and talked a little bit earlier about risk appetite, and I feel like in general, people who are going down the startup route have a little bit higher active creativity and a little bit higher risk appetite. And so, one of the things I also see a lot is that those things are used in other parts of the business, but not necessarily in marketing. So just because we are here talking about marketing, I'd love to get your last thoughts on, if we know we have this risk appetite in our business development, how do we make sure that that is showing up in our marketing?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that's a very tough question. I think even for us for Catapult, we want to be as creative as possible, and we're trying not to, process and policy stifle that. But at the same time, we do look at our reputation. We do look how we like to be seen and how we want to position ourselves, and sometimes taking that risk adverse or being very having a high risk might come back down to haunt you, right? So you're always trying to do a balancing act. Where I feel where I feel maybe it's where I like to play in, or the space we like to play in. It's that space in between that. Yes, you're following the guidelines, but you're stepping outside the line within quote unquote boundaries. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So maybe it can give you a little bit of an example. I think for something that we tend to do with Catapult, we really try to focus on the individuals, on the people on the team, on the people that work with us as well. That works well with us, but not everybody in the team is going to be comfortable with that showing, right? So you need to be aware of that as well and being like, I'm okay doing that. Maybe some members of the team are okay doing that, but not everybody in the team is okay doing that, right? So then you got to look at different ways we can be creative, or you can think outside the box,
Mm-hmm.
and really that what try to sets you apart. One of the things that we know that works well for us, and we see this when the engagement comes in and when we see the LinkedIn messages come in and the meeting requests come in, it's when we communicate to our social media audience about, you know, little struggles that we've had to overcome
Mm-hmm.
and what we did to overcome that little struggle. It doesn't have to be a huge ordeal. It's just a little tiny thing that we feel resonates very well with the entrepreneur because they dealt with the same thing. So they're like, you get me, you understand me, we got to talk.
Right.
And so they see that, they're like, okay, there's a connection there. And right away, they want to communicate. So for us, I would say it's showing vulnerability. I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of companies want to show like, oh, we're there, we're at all the events, we're invited to all these things. And I would say for us, we're still, I would say we're evolved from our startup space. We're now into settling into our third year, going into our fourth year, and things are picking up. But that doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes along the way. Like every company are, but we're comfortable with that. And we're comfortable being vulnerable. We're comfortable showing you behind the hood.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think last week, I my own fault. I didn't look up inventors early enough, and I couldn't get signed up to the healthcare networking event on time. And I sent an email and everything. Hey, can you put me in the waiting list? What can we do? And no reply, no nothing. Okay, fine. I went to other events, and last minute, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm walking by. I'm already here. Might as well go in. The worst thing they can say is no,
Right.
right? But going through and getting in, that was wonderful. Making a little post about that and
Mm-hmm.
getting all the engagement. And a lot of entrepreneurs being like, I understand that. I know that feeling of like being ignored or being maybe like you didn't do something on time because you were so busy doing other stuff,
Right.
right? And you kind of resonate. So now I couldn't maybe not share that and be like, hey, no, we're super responsible, get everything done on time. But sharing that, it's a human side of things.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, okay, these guys are human.
Yeah.
These guys understand entrepreneurship. They understand the ups and downs,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's really what kind of sets us apart is that we're comfortable doing that and comfortable showing us, showing Catapult startups under the hood.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that really resonates with me because I'm all about the people and the connections, and again, that's not all people, right? That's why we ended up chatting and having this conversation because we have that in common, but that doesn't mean that everybody has that in common. And when you can focus on the things, Daniel, the example that you gave is a great example because that's what you wanted to say that day. And it's also what people needed to hear that day. But it wasn't 100% about what do my people want to hear? It was about this is a real story. This happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to other people. And the thing I liked about that too is like I'm sure there's a lot of people who would say, I was late, I didn't register, nobody got back to me, so I won't try to get in. But there is that resilience also that you demonstrate. And then if people who would like to build that type of resilience, then that's also, you want to have those types of people in your community with you. And so when we have good clarity on, I mean, call it vulnerability or call it authenticity or call it whatever you want, but like that who we are, right? This is who we are and this is what we would do. And we create the possibility for that to be reflected in our marketing, that it allows our people to be attracted to the message, to the campaign, to the narrative faster, because we're not creating a roadblock there. We're creating free access to that. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up because we're just about at an hour. But Daniel, if people are interested in chatting with you or learning more about Catapult Startup and what you guys do and its support for startups, where is the best place for people to contact you?
Yeah, so you can definitely check out our website at catapultstartups.org, or you can also send me an email at daniel.monzon. That's daniel.monzon at catapultstartups.org.
Awesome. And Daniel is tagged in the post that was connected to this event for today. So if you are watching the event and you would love to connect with him, which I highly recommend that you do, you can just click on his name and it'll take you right there. If you do send a connection request, tell him that you heard him on the show, because then he will know what you heard him say. It'll be a little bit easier for an introduction. But make sure to get connected. This is something that I say at the end of every one of the Crazy Stupid Marketing shows is, this show is a place where we open the doors to conversations. These are big conversations. There are no one answers for everybody. These are exploratory conversations. And in order to find where you need to go with your part of the exploratory conversation, it's important to stay in the conversation. And so if you are currently in the process of marketing a startup, or you're curious about startups and what you might want to do, or you've had some failures with your marketing that you would like to not continue, then I encourage you, connect with Daniel, connect with myself, connect with the other people who are in the chat. So we had James and we have Omar joining us live, and everybody else joining us on the replay. Connect with each other and stay in the conversation, because that allows you to explore, as we talked about, your runway. What is the direction for you to go, and how can you get there as quickly as possible? Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Daniel, so much for sharing all your wonderful expertise and insight with us. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.